So hepatitis B serology, I would like to share with you on how to understand this table, because I found myself having difficulty to understand this table and to convert into the depth understanding of the hepatitis B. So today I would like to share with you. Let's begin with the structure of the hepatitis itself. This is the DNA. So we have the 3 layers here of, first of all, the HB surface antigen, and we have the HB envelope antigen, its envelope, and now we get into the core, HB core antigen, and last but not least we have the HBV DNAs. Okay, so when we look at the structure, it will help us to understand how the presentations in the blood itself. So if, let's say, we have the incubation period here, probably about 4 to 12 weeks, and then at this point, if we do an investigation, if we do PCR, then probably it's going to be positive. But what we want to look at is actually these parameters. So the first one, because surface is on the outside, so the first one, the surface will be appeared. So we have the HBs surface antigen. Second, we'll have the envelope. So the envelope is very important because this will show the infectivity period of the infections. So we have the HBe antigen. And the core, it's not a routine to check on the core antigen, but we did check on the antibody, and usually the antibody will start to develop IgM during the acute infection, and at the same time the IgG. This is the HB core antibody. Okay. And then the DNA. So start from here, you can always get the DNA, especially during the acute or high infectivity during the chronic infection. And last but not least, what we have when we measure the titer for hepatitis, right? So basically we are measuring the hepatitis surface antibody. So it will develop later, the antibody HB as antibody. Okay, so now we can do this difficult what we call it, a table. So let's put it into a systematic understanding. So we have 4 phases that we like to know. First, the acute, chronic, and then post-infection, or we call it they already immune, and then never get infected but vaccinated. Okay, and we have this HBs surface antigen, HB envelope antigen, HB core antigen, and we have the HB surface antibody, we have HB envelope antibody, we have HB core antibody. We can divide into IgM and IgG, and but last but not least we have the HBV DNA. Okay, now we can start to fill in. So I would like to fill in with where's my pen? Okay, with this. Okay, so that we won't get confused. Okay, so the earlier part, we have the HBs antigen will be, oh sorry, I forgot about the early, resolve, high infectivity, low infectivity. Okay, so of course during the early and also the resolving, we have the surface antigen here, and we can also have the surface antigen during the chronic phase. But what is the difference between the acute and chronic is the E, the envelope here. The envelope is only present during the early and also during the high infectivity or acute on chronic. Okay, but it does not present here. And for the HB core antigen, it's not usually measured in clinical setting especially. So we have the hepatitis surface antibody, which actually developed later. So that is why it's all negative here, not present here, but only present for the vaccinated, because vaccine, what we inject in the vaccine is the HBs antigen. So we only have this in vaccinations. We don't have other serology markers. So for anti-hemoglobin E antibody, it's usually not that specific. It's can be present during the resolved acute and also chronic phase. So it's not really helpful in determining the phase of the disease. But the IgG and IgM might be helpful at one point, because IgM is present during the acute infection itself. And the IgG is actually quite long. It can be present here, and of course post-vaccination it will be positive. And this is how to differentiate post-vaccine or post-vaccine or post-immune or post-infection. And then HBV DNA. So typically the DNA or the viral load that the clinician that we are always interested with is the HBV DNAs, which will be present during the early and also the infective. Alright, so that is why in clinical setting what is important is that first the HB surface antigen. If it's present, then it shows there is a recent infection, acute. It might be acute or chronic. But if this is positive, then you have to take HBE antibody, HBE antigen, so you can tell whether it's infective, high infectivity or no. And you have to take the ALT, the alanine transferase. And yeah, this is how we understand this table.